I'm Jeff, and I want to thank you for checking out the channel here. Today I am talking about how I installed the M&R Modular Bumper Fog Light Kit on my 2022 Bronco Wildtrak here with the modular bumper. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has been looking at different light kits and options for sticking inside this slot on the modular bumper. For me, it was important to get something that kind of had more of an OEM factory look to it. So if you check out the kit here, you can see that the bracket that mounts the lights is really nicely designed to fill the void in that corner of the modular bumper. So it's trust me, a really heavy piece of steel here. There's no flex or bending in this thing. It's powder coated. And once you install the 4 pod lights that come with the kit on each side for 8 lights total on the 2 brackets, once you install it, you can see it really is going to do a great job of filling up that hole or slot in the modular bumper. And to me, that gives it a much more of a factory look than being able to see through the bumper, see wires in the background. Talk about what comes in all the packaging with all the boxes removed here. You end up with your 2 brackets or metal shrouds, they call them here in the kit, for each side of the vehicle. Then you're going to have 8 total of the 20-watt lights, 4 per side of the vehicle to go with the brackets. Each one of these puts out 2,000 lumens, or a total of 8,000 lumens per side, 16,000 lumens for the entire vehicle, which again is really bright and also again not approved for running on road. In addition to that, each side is going to have 8 total screws and washers to bolt these pods into the fixture here. So the kit comes with that. Then you get 2 grounds to take all of the wires out of here, which are the blue wires, and ground them locally somewhere convenient for you to the vehicle. And then the other 2 wires here are going to be positive. That's the brown and the yellow are the supply lines for the vehicle. The yellow one being for the amber daytime running lights or backlight, whatever you want to call it. And then the brown ones are going to be for the white lights. Finally, you get the overall harness. So the harness will tie into each side, and this harness will cross over behind your bumper and get into the other side of the lighting, and then ultimately it goes up for power supply. You've got 2 kind of wires here. You've got a black one and a red one. The red one is going to take all of the white lights, which again are coming out of the brown on the individual light pods. And then the black one is going to take the amber or daytime running lights, which are all of the yellow lights out of the light kits. So once those are all tied in, you'll be able to ultimately tie these into 2 aux switches on your vehicle. The white ones, which are coming out of the red cable here, have to be at least a 10-watt capable. You can put the amber ones onto anything you want. Again, that's what's included in the entire kit. Per the instructions, I would certainly agree. You're going to want to definitely install the light pods onto the bracket before trying to put this into the vehicle. I'm going to start putting these in and see how they do on alignment here. The first one looks like it's all right. But remember that there's a bend in this, so I expect the angle of the light will be a little different than the angle of the bumper. So we'll see how they align once I get them installed here. And here's what a fully assembled bracket with the 4 pods in it looks like. So I got them all pretty well aligned, you can see. They take a little bit of effort manipulating with your fingers. If you have big hands, getting these screws in and threaded is not easy, and you definitely want to make sure you torque them down pretty tightly, and it will bend the tabs a little bit and get them to align flushly with the light pods here. You can apply a lot of torque to the lights to get them to line up, so you can see the faces of them are all pretty parallel to each other now. When I first put them in, they were a little out of whack of each other, but you can apply some pressure and maybe 20, 30 pounds of force and actually get the little tabs to bend to align the lights pretty well. Once I get them on the vehicle, I'll be able to see how well they're lined up, but you can see they look pretty close to being parallel to each other now, and I'll do a little tweaking once I get them on the vehicle to get the final alignment. And here's both of the bracket assemblies complete with the pod lights installed. Again, before putting them on the vehicle, just trying to get them generally aligned in the same plane across the faces of the light, which is not parallel to the direction of the bumper. But just kind of make it so you have a little less tweaking to do once you get it mounted on the vehicle. Once you have the kits assembled for each side, the lights all installed, then we're going to go ahead and connect the wires for each of the 3 colors here. So remember, the blue wire is going to be for the ground, so we'll tie the 4 blues into each other, and then those are going to tie into a grounding wire that's going to be grounded out somewhere locally near the light assembly. Then the yellow all get tied together. That's going to be for the amber lights. Once all those are connected and installed at the bumper, then the amber lights are going to be tied into the black cable, and the black cable will go to its own independent aux switch. You have a Bronco with the aux switches in your overhead. And finally, the brown lights are for the white off-road lights. Those are all going to be hooked together. Those will end up going into the red cable, and the red cable will go into its own independent aux switch as well. So you'll be able to control the amber backlights, which will get powered off of whatever you connect the black wire into on your aux switches. And the primary white lights will all be tied into the red cable and its own independent aux switch. And after using a little flame or a heat gun to shrink wrap this down, you just put some electrical tape on it to and now this unit is ready to install in the bumper. Now with the vehicle, we're going to remove the 3 T40 fasteners out of here and reinstall them in the 3 slots or holes on your assembly. Again, we've already come out here and got wiring the ground done. It's wired and just given some extra tape to make sure it's nice and watertight. And then we have the yellow and the brown connected. Again, the yellow is going to be for the amber backlights, and the white is going to be for the white off-road lights. And I'll just go ahead and assemble this from behind into the bracket here. And using a T40 Torx, we'll go ahead and remove these bolts now. And with this just loosely installed now, kind of in the learn as you go mode, I'm going to go ahead and put some masking tape here just to kind of protect the bumper here. You saw me put a cloth towel over it. I just want to make sure I don't somehow scratch up the bumper with the tool here. Now that installed, we're in your good and solid. The one long cable, of course, is the grounding wire that will tie in somewhere here inside the engine compartment. And then we've got the other wires still underneath here, ready to be tied in for the yellow, which are the amber lights, are going to go into the included wiring harness, and that's going to be on the black. And then the brown wires here, which run the white fog lights, are going to go onto the red cable on that 2-wire harness. So installing the wire harness here, I've already dropped it down through the engine compartment. So interestingly, the wire harness is 2 pieces connected in the middle. So either side is equal length. So you can drop whichever end of it you want down in through the engine compartment to get down to your lights behind the bumper. So here you can see I've got one set ready to be wired And then where I found a nice spot to drop it here, give you a step back so you can see into the compartment. Right down outside the radiator is just a good area. It was really easy, just kind of thread it down in here, pretty much in line with where the hood support is. And you can take it all the way down underneath there. Dropped out right here. Here's the wiring set up for the driver's side. And then the harness continues. I just ran it down through the gap under here, let it rest up over the top of the bottom skid plate. It won't be able to go down any further because of how the skid plate is bolted onto the vehicle. So the wire is just going to be resting across the bottom of this, but it was really easy to tuck it up through this seam. And this is where the other end of it comes down by the wires for the passenger side lights. I decided the easy way to access a ground and just run the wiring here, make sure everything is concealed well, is just to go ahead and drop the skid plate. There's just 4 bolts underneath the skid plate. One here, one down on that end right there, and 2 on the bottom here to remove the skid plate and just get easy access to everything underneath. And with the skid plate down, I decided an easy place to ground the wire. Here's the ground. I've already stuck it in initially. If you look under your vehicle, there's one of these on each side. So you can see there's bare metal under here, and it's a great grounding point. And the grounding cable fits perfectly on it. And there's one on the other side of the vehicle as well. Right here. For this cable. So that's where I'm going to ground both of these. It was just easier to access with dropping the skid plate. And this is the grounding cable. No hot items near the cable, so it's a nice, clean, safe run once the skid plate is up protecting it. And for the passenger side light, the grounding cable, it was easy to kind of run it up through one little spot on the frame right here, and just kind of make sure there's no slack wire or cable hanging anywhere. And again, I tied it into the mirror image of the driver's side. And this helps give a better view of the grounding point with the skid plate down. One is right there. And the other is right here. Now that we have the ground negative taken care of and tucked up underneath, the last thing we had to do for connecting with the lights are the yellow cable. Remember, yellow is for the amber. The yellow is going to connect into the black wire harness, and the brown is for our off-road white lights, and those are going to connect into the red. So we'll get that taken care of here. And here's the passenger side connections. Again, the black is connected to the amber lighting, which is the yellow, and the red harness cable is connected to the brown wiring, which is for the white off-road lights. So now that the wiring is complete down at the lights and the bumper, we're back up to where I ran the cable up, again for reference. Pretty close to where the support for the hood is. If you look down there, you can see where I ran it in, a nice gap by the radiator. You'll find your own spot down there. And I tucked the wire in along the trim here, basically wrap it around another one of the wires that was underneath. And that leaves us with our wire up here in the engine compartment by the firewall. And this is where all the auxiliary wires are. You have that, and you can see down there, they're all hanging blank and ready to be connected. I've selected to run my white lights, the higher amp draw, off of my aux number 2, which is a 15 amp draw. And that cable is the green and brown. See, I've already pulled it out here and freed it. And then aux number 3, which is violet and green, is I'm going to go ahead and run my backlight amber lights. So you can see I've already got the cable here. Ford has kind of taped them all down into a bundle, and I'm just trying to pull it free and leave the other ones taped into the bundle. So now I have my 2 cables, the violet and the green for aux 3, 10 amp, and the green and the brown for aux 2, the 15 amp one. I'm going to reserve my aux 1, which is a 30 amp for in case I ever do something high amp draw like a winch. So both of these wires are stripped now and ready to go in. Remember again, our higher amp one, 15 amp, is the green and the brown, which is sitting right here. And the red power line going to our lights is the one that's running the white lights. So I'm just going to go ahead and get that in here. Finally, I did a little few zip ties to clean things up. So again, this is the cable coming up from down below, and as it comes up, I tie it up to another cable here, zip tied, and it just runs along the inside here pretty neatly. I wrapped it a couple times around the wire that was already here. I think it's actually the trunk release cable. I just wrapped it around there and zip tied it with a couple zip ties to make sure it doesn't walk. It really leaves for a very clean looking install here. And finally, this is where I taped it up and brought it up, zip tied it in here. And those are the 2 wires again that we saw that are powering this down from our aux switches, with the available aux wires still hanging down and masked off by Ford. And with the install done, always fun to check the work. So first we'll test aux 3, which is the amber set. And then we'll put on the whites. They're very bright. I know there's some questions about what happens if they're both on. I think if they're both on, they both run, just that the weight is so overpowering that you're not going to see the amber. Yeah, I just can't tell the amber's on because the white is absolutely blinding. So my guess is they might both be running the backlight feature, but you're just not going to see it with the amber on. Just an update from my initial install. I noticed that the driver's side lights didn't seem to be coming out as bright as the passenger side lights. So to me, the only difference between those 2 would be the ground, because they each were independently grounded, but on a common power source. So sure enough, I went out and checked out the ground underneath the vehicle, how I described putting it in on the driver's side. And although it was grounded, there's a lot of paint in that bolt, and it looked like it just wasn't making good contact and letting good amperage flow for the light. So I ended up disconnecting that ground and tying that side in right here and running a wire down through the same path that I put the M&R supplied harness down there, but I ran that down and actually grounded out the driver's side. So if you tried my initial grounding recommendations on those 2 bolts underneath the skid plate and you didn't have a good contact on one or either of them, you could always choose to go with a ground up here and just run a wire down and ground both those out. I still left the passenger side lights grounded to the point that I demoed in the video underneath the or above the skid plate there, but I ended up taking the driver's side over to this grounding point inside the vehicle right here. So this is headlights, low beam, the tree line you see out there and the cutoff of the low beam lights. Those trees are about 150, 180 feet away. You know, it's about a half a football field. There's high beams, and then keeping high beams on, this is with the floods. It's dramatic to the eye. The phone automatically adjusts because it's so sensitive to light, but you can just see it lights up the woods and everything here. And this is the off-road lights off. This is headlights off. That does have right now the daytime running the back amber lights on. You don't really see them. Here's on, there's off. So they just don't really do much. They're easy to see when looking at the front of the vehicle, but they don't do much to light up the road. And then here is headlights off and the off-road lights. My neighbors are gonna hate me, but very bright. And then keeping those on, I'll put the headlights back on. That's low beam, that's high beam, and that's turning off the white floods or off-road lights. This is looking down the road with high beams, with the low beams, off-road lights, and now the headlights are off. Now the off-road lights are off. Again, it looks a lot darker to the eye. The iPhone is just so sensitive to light, but again, these put out a lot of light. This is the off-road lights again. They easily cast light about a football field down the road. It's headlights looking down the road, low beam. That's high beam. That's headlights off. That's the floodlights. Again, they totally light up the house at the end of the street to my eye. Looks different again on the camera, but these turn night into day. Headlights, off-road lights, headlights, high beam, low beam, off-road lights. This is regular headlights. That's the off-road lights. I think what I really like so much about these is that with the 8 beams, they're so diffuse. It isn't like you see a spot down the road. It just floods everything. Usually 45 degrees right and left of the bumper too. It's just an even light that goes everywhere. I really like it as compared to a traditional beam. It's high beams, low beams, and the floods. Just bathe everything in light. I want to thank you again for stopping by. I hope that answered all your questions if you're trying to install these or you're wondering how they look. If I didn't cover something, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try and follow up quickly in the comment section for you. If you can take the time to leave a like or a subscribe, I sure do appreciate it here. And I'll be sure to follow up if I learn anything different about how the lights work. Thank you again for coming by the channel.